Hugh Culver back again for another SOS webinar. We are providing these about once a month as we realize that there's an opportunity for some training and sharing with the SOS members. So the SOS program is growing quite quickly, which we're really excited about, but we also realize that we have a responsibility to make sure that we're helping our members to provide, the best possible service that we can. And so while we're busy improving how SOS is delivered, we also want to give back to you to make sure that whatever we're learning about what works best in terms of online marketing and building a bigger following and selling services and products, that we're sharing that information with you. So we've already recorded one webinar, which was how to write a better blog, and that is in the resources for the SOS program. And we're now going to be doing one today, which is all about using images in your blog. And then we're going to just keep on going with these about once every month with different topics that we think are going to be really relevant and valuable for you. And so I know that a lot of the SOS members are going to be listening to this as a recording, but that's great. This is a really valuable piece of training for you. And I'm going to keep these to about 30 or 40 minutes, so they're pretty short and sweet. And again, we're creating a resource inventory for you, and we're going to send you a quick email after this recording just to remind you of where that link is, so that you can actually see other resources that we're putting together for you. So it's early days, but we will be growing that inventory as we go. Okay, so in this webinar, we're going to be talking about images. Oh my goodness, when I first started doing blogs, I did not like this stuff. I do not come from a background of working with images. I've never used Photoshop and all these crazy tools. But I've come to learn that it's really important that you master at least the basics of how to add images to your blog. And we're certainly noticing with our SOS members that the people that have really good images, and I'll explain to you what I mean by good images, that are also set up in the featured image slot. So if they're using WordPress, there's a featured image slot, which means that that image is going to get special coding attached to it, which means that when we insert the link to your post, that the right image is pulled up. So the worst thing is to have no image. If you have no image, then what happens when we insert your post to go out onto Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever it's going, that it'll actually just pull some random image. We don't want that. So ideally you want to have every post has one image, and that image is selected as the featured image. And then that means that whenever your post shows up, whether people are using a Google Reader or, well, that's not available anymore, but like for example, I use Feedly, and I'll show you that later in the show. And Feedly is a free reader, and that's how I read all of my blog posts. Well, if your image is set up correctly, then that means your image will also show up in those readers. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about using images for your blog. And I'll stop throughout and just ask a couple of questions of you, and we'll get a little bit of exchange going on here. Okay, so why are images important? Well, first of all, people scan blogs. So most people are using some kind of a reader to decide whether or not they want to read a blog. I know for my blog reader, I probably have well over a dozen blogs that I regularly am checking into and following, and I just know that I'm influenced by images, just like when I open up a magazine or when I'm watching I suppose television, if I ever do that, the images make a difference. And so people scan, and they're going to be attracted to images that stop them from moving on. It also helps you to create a bit of a brand style. What I mean by that is a certain style for how you want to project yourself. So I like to use images that are a little bit odd or a little bit non-traditional, but also that are going to get people's attention. And so that's kind of the way I like to write as well, is I like to write with sort of a short bullety type style, and I like to use images that are kind of make people stop and wonder what the heck I'm talking about there. So, but at the same time, you can have a completely different brand style. So images are a great way to do that. Also, it's really good when people are sharing your blog, because again, if they grab a link, then say they grab your link and stick it in Facebook, it means that your image will pop up automatically, which is going to be really attractive. Or if people are doing a screenshot or you're doing a screenshot of your blog, that image is going to be there top and center. So that means that when that screenshot shows up on social media, there's your picture. There's a picture for people to see. So just try to imagine, a screenshot that shows a whole bunch of text with a headline compared to a screenshot that shows an image with a headline. Obviously, the image is going to get more eyeballs. People are going to be more interested. It's great for sites like Pinterest because obviously that's what they're all designed for. So Pinterest has certain requirements in terms of what works best. But basically, you can put almost any image in there. It's best if it's a standalone image, like the image on this slide to the right. It's designed to go on Pinterest because it's already got all the graphics on top of the image. It's also, as I said, great for posting on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google+. So all of the major social media platforms because they work off of links, and those links will automatically pull up an image. So lots and lots of good reasons for why you want to use an image. And again, this is Feedly. This is how I read my blogs. And you can see on the right-hand side, when I look at Ann Handley's blog, that all of these images pop up. And so right away, I'm going to be influenced by those images. I'm going to be, deciding, okay, does that look interesting? And I'll probably look at the image before I actually look at the headline, and certainly before I read any kind of text. So images are really great for all of these new services that are popping up where people are quickly scanning and trying to decide, am I going to spend any time going any further before I read the text? So it's well worth your effort. If you want to get a little, technical, then in a recent SlideShare that I'm working on right now, I came across the statistic that 94% more views were attracted by content creating compelling images than content without images. And that's from a UK firm called Market Me Suite. And I think that it's pretty, sort of self-evident that we're highly influenced by images. We're more likely to look at a car advertisement if there's a picture of the car than if it's just text. We're more likely to stop flipping the newspaper if we see an image that gets our attention rather than if it's just text. So we all know images work. Okay, so the big question is, let's start with the basics. So where do I get them? So where do I go to get these images? Certainly if you go online, you're going to start to notice that some of these images are really expensive, and you can pay $35 and up for a quality picture. Well, we don't want to be doing that every time we do a blog. So here's a list of places to get images. Obviously, you can start with your own personal images. So I take a lot of pictures of my dog Riley just because he's a kind of a fun guy to take a picture of, and it turns out that that's actually not a bad picture once in a while for me to use, but also I can use my own pictures of sunsets. I can use my pictures of my, the beach by my house. I mean, I can just out skiing. So I can just use, my picture, and especially because I like to put text on top of the picture, I can dress it up. And so, just kind of a regular everyday picture can actually look pretty cool once I apply text onto it. So start with your own personal images. That way there's no copyright infringement issues. You can do whatever you want with that image. You can also go to Flickr. That's one of my favorite places. I find that on Flickr, even though it's slower, you have to be a little bit patient to go through the searching. It's not the best way to search. It's not the best search engine, but you're going to find unusual pictures, which is what I'm looking for. So right now I'm working on a major SlideShare that's going to be coming out this week, actually. My last SlideShare is now over 27,000 views and has delivered almost 850 opt-ins to my website. So it's a hugely valuable investment for me, and it takes a lot of time for me because I go to Flickr because I'm looking for oddball pictures. I'm looking for stuff that's not normal, and so Flickr's a great resource, and I'll tell you later in this show how to use Flickr properly. You can go to the Dollar Photo Club. I'll tell you more about that as well, which is what we just started using 2 months ago. We find that it's fantastic. It's super fast, really good resource. There's millions of photographs, and just as the name suggests, everything is $1. I'll explain also how to use Canva, which is extremely popular for editing your image and resizing your image, but also you can even buy some basic images on there. And just a little note is that when you see the word royalty-free, so if you type into Google free photos, you're going to see a lot of free photos, royalty-free photos. That does not mean that they're free. What royalty-free means is that if you pay us to use this photograph, you have the rights to use that photograph. There's no royalty attached to it. You don't have to pay a commission every time you use it, but you still have to pay for the photograph. So it's a bit of a misnomer. They say royalty-free, but what they really mean is that you still have to pay for the photograph. So just a little sidebar there. Okay, so let me walk you through now different places to get your photographs up. Before I do that, why don't you type in for me in the Q&A box, what is your favorite place right now to find photographs? So go ahead in the Q&A box on the top, just type in what's your favorite place to find photographs that is working for you. Where do you go now? I'm just curious. So you can just type that in the Q&A in the top. We'll just see, where is it that you go for photographs now? So Sarah says Google Images. Yep, we should mention that Google Images is not where you want to go. Very good. So I want to make sure that everybody knows you do not want to go to Google Images because of copyright infringement issues. Elaine says personal photographs. Oh yeah, and Aaron, who does agricultural photographs. Peter says Konzni, Konzni. I don't know that one. I'll have to look that one up. Oh, Jean says Lego Creator. That's cool. Okay. And Brenda says Graphics Factory. Very cool because she has an account there. Okay, so we all have different sources. Now, so thank you for that. So let's look at Flickr. I find Flickr is a really good source. So Flickr, if you do it correctly, is a great resource for free photographs that you can safely use that are going to be a little bit offbeat, which is always something that I think is worthwhile to get people's attention. So a couple of quick steps for using Flickr. The first thing is you open up, you don't need to have an account for Flickr, but if you want to set up an account, I think you have to log in through Yahoo. I find it really glitchy, so I just usually just start using it without an account. Number one thing is obviously you enter for a search. Number two is you want to select Creative Commons commercial use. That allows you to use those photographs if you give reference to the photographer. So you still can't just slap the photographs up there. And sometimes you're also restricted in terms of manipulating the photographs. So I don't manipulate photographs. I don't put them in Photoshop and change the coloring. So I know that I'm safe to use those photographs. However, if you were planning on building them into something bigger and sending them off to an editor, you have to be very careful to look at the actual Creative Commons rights attached to that photograph. But I know that in my case, I simply grab the photograph. Sometimes I use it as it is. Sometimes I add text. So as long as I've used Creative Commons commercial use, I know I'm safe. So that's my second step. My third step is I click on the image that I'm looking for. Then I click on the download button in the bottom right-hand corner. And then finally, I select the size. And I typically select a large size, so I would usually go for the original size. And then I'm going to reduce that size. So I want to download the original size into my file. And I find that's always the best for me to go back and look at later if I want to adjust it. I don't want to download some small version and then be stuck with it. And then once I finish that, the next step is I'm going to reference the photographer. So the final image that I might use on my blog post could look something like this. So there's the image that I selected. In the bottom corner, I've referenced the photographer just by copying in the URL. So that I can do it that way, or I can list it at the end of the post. I like to put it right on the image so the photographer has the most chance of being visible. Now this is not a live link, so I do not want people to leave my blog. So I will reference the photographer, but I'm not going to have them leave the blog. So there's not, I just make sure it's not a live link. So that's using Flickr. Again, it takes a little bit more time, but I think it's really worth it because you're going to get something really unusual that's going to get people's attention. So another resource that we started to use is called the Dollar Photo Club, and our web designer put us onto this about 2 months ago, and we're really enjoying it. I don't use it all the time because after all, like all of these stock photography sites, it is full of millions of images, and a lot of them are just really I don't know how to describe it, but they just scream stock photography. So I don't like using them because they just look completely fake and photoshopped, and so I try to avoid those. However, if you do poke around, you will find some really neat images that, and you can do whatever you want with them. Once you pay that $1, you can crop them, you can chop them up, you can whatever you want. So that's really nice to have that. And you don't have to reference the photographer. It's completely yours to use. So how do you use it? Well, you type in search. So for example, here I've typed in the word communication. It comes up with, like literally it'll come up with, well in this case, just under 1 million photographs. So that's kind of hopeless. So what I'll do is I'll quickly scan. I find one image that looks interesting, but what's really neat about Dollar Photo Club is when I click on that one image, like this image of the two gals here in the top left-hand corner, it produces a whole bunch of related photographs below, and those are usually the ones that I find the best. So I will go through those ones first, and I will look for something that's a little offbeat, that's the right size, that I want. We use only landscape. Landscape means that it's rectangular horizontally as opposed to vertically, so that's what fits my blog. So I'm only going to be looking for that shape. I also am going to be scanning for an image that has room for text. So I'm going to be looking for an image that has something on one side or the other that's going to allow me to put text on top. So I don't want something too busy. So I'm looking for something that has sky or a building or a wall, or so I'm always looking for that kind of an image, because that makes it so much easier for me to create like a little mini poster. And then what's really cool, like all of these sites that sell stock photography, is you create your own little gallery. So for me, for example, working on this SlideShare, well, there are, I don't really know, but there's dozens and dozens of photographs probably in this SlideShare. So I build a little gallery, and that way as I'm shopping around looking for the pictures, before I even buy them, I just have a whole inventory inside a gallery. So my SlideShare is called Build a Better Blog, and so in that gallery there's dozens of photographs that I'm considering before I actually buy them. And then when I finally select them, I just download them, and there they are. And they are coming, they're going to be downloaded in a high resolution, and so I'll explain to you in a few minutes how to actually deal with that, because that's not what you really want to, that's not really what you want to work with. Oh, Jean has just said, I like the idea of referencing the photographer or the source on the image itself. It helps to avoid any future controversies if you have. Yes, very good. It helps your memory if you want to go back for more. It really does. That's a good point, Jean. Yeah, and I got that trick from my friend Mike Sapersky. We've actually led a program together in Vancouver, and that's how he was doing it. I just thought that was a really neat way of doing it, where I put the reference to the photographer right on the image. Now, in my SlideShares, I keep talking about SlideShare here, but in my SlideShares, I put all of them at the end on one page, and they're actually linked to the photographer. So it's a live link. And I do that just because I've noticed that seems to be appropriate in SlideShare. So in SlideShare, I wait till the end, then one page is for all the photographs, and I actually name what photograph it is. So I might say man on bench, and then I'll put the link, and I might say two women talking, then I'll put the link. And it's a live link, so people can actually leave my SlideShare and go to that photographer, which I think is kind of a really neat thing that I can do in SlideShare, is actually send some business to that photographer. Okay, so back to the Dollar Photo Club. I create a gallery. The Dollar Photo Club is a monthly membership. I pay $10 a month, and that allows me to have 10 high-resolution images every month, and I can get any additional one for $1. So for me, I pay, basically it's $120 a year, and I'm probably never going to use up, I'm probably never going to buy 120 images. So in other words, I know I'm not going to probably go over on that. And so that's a pretty safe investment. What it also means for me is that if I'm working on something and I'm just trying to get this show finished, or I'm going to go present tomorrow for a client, I can go on Dollar Photo Club and probably in a couple of minutes I can get the image I want, and I'm out of there and I'm done. Whereas if I go to Flickr, it's going to take me a lot longer, and so it's a really good backup for me. You can get a membership for Dollar Photo Club just by going to hughculver.com/photos. So that's an affiliate link. So we will get a little bit of a kickback, but that's for giving you the advice. There you go. So just go /photos. Now, I want to introduce you to a really cool tool that we've been using for over a year now. It's called Canva, CANVA.com. And this may become your go-to resource for all of your photo work. It's got probably now millions of people are using it. It's completely free. And when you open it up, you're going to see this image that's on the screen right now. And the first thing it's going to ask you is, okay, what size do you want? So what are you trying to create? And it has everything from your Facebook image to a Google Plus image to posters to whatever you want. It's figured out what the proper size is. So I'm going to pick a poster size in this example. The next thing that you do in Canva is you go over and you can bring in your own images. So you just hit upload your images. It's a very simple, you can see how simple it is. There's very few buttons you have to really worry about or understand. So I go upload my image, and below that button you can see all the images I've already uploaded, my signature, pictures of climbing, close-ups of me, pictures off of Flickr. So you can see all of these different images. So if I click upload your image, next thing is I can grab a picture of Riley and I can pop it in. I just drag it over and it fills in the poster size because it already knows that's what I want to create. So it's pretty simple. Then after I've done that, this is where it gets really cool, then you can click on text. So you see in the top left-hand corner here, you've got layouts, text, background, uploads. Just 4 options. So then I hit text, and then it's got all these crazy banners and buttons, and it's really kind of fun. And it's not overwhelming at all. It's all contained in this little box. And so let's say I click this little banner here, and then as soon as I click it, it pops it into my image. And then I just simply type away, and I just type in whatever text I want, and I put the little 7 in here. And as soon as I type it, it lets me change the font and all sorts of other things. But it's pretty cool because it doesn't overwhelm you with all sorts of options until you want them. So if I double click on this text, ways to create your vision, then a little menu pops up and says, okay, what font, what size, that sort of stuff. But it disappears when I don't need it. So now I create this little simple image. It's pretty quick. Like that took me a couple of minutes. And then literally I just click the top right-hand button here, download, and I'm done. And as long as I've used my own images, it's completely free. But if you were to go into background over here on the left, it does have, they've got thousands and thousands, I don't know, maybe millions of images now, and those are all $1. So if you did use one of their images, like a sunset or 2 people talking or whatever, if you use one of their images, then when you go to hit download, it'll say, oh, you've used one of our images, that'll be $1. And that's it. You just pay $1 and you're done. So you get all of these amazing editing tools. You get access to all these images for $1, and it's pretty powerful. And so it's a no wonder that it's super popular. People really love using Canva. And you'll start to recognize that people are using all these kind of banners and stuff. And I just find it's kind of a really fun way to dress up an image. And again, the more dressed up your image is, the more likely it is people will share it. Another really popular one is called picmonkey, and again, it's totally free, and you'll see lots of similarities there. Very simple and easy to use. You can also use both of these tools to change the size of your image. So you could simply, if I go back to this one, I could simply have, where is it here? I could upload my image, slide it over, and then when I go to download it, it will ask me what size I want, and I think it gives you 3 choices. So I would just pick the smallest size for my web. So there you go. Canva and picmonkey are both good for editing your photographs and also changing the size of your photographs. All right, so let's talk now about size of photographs. So what is this? How does this all work in this crazy thing? Because I find this sometimes gets very confusing. So let's talk about size and resolution. So one of the big differences with working with the internet is, of course, you don't want to have a high resolution slide. You don't want to have a high def slide or high res slide, as they call it. And the difference is in printing, for example, generally you're going to have 300 dpi. So without getting super technical, because I'm not very qualified to be technical, 300 dpi means dots per inch. So quite literally, 1 inch of this image would have 300 dots, and those dots make the image. Those are like little pixels. And on the web, you want to have 72 dots per image. Well, why would you want that? Well, it's because the bigger the image, the slower the website. So you want to have an image that looks good. It can actually be viewed nicely. It looks very, very sharp, but you don't want to have a lot of dots, because the more dots you have, DPI, the slower it is for the website to load your image. Now, most people have super high-speed internet now, and so it's getting better and better. However, it will definitely slow down your site. So having a lot of high-res images is really a bad idea. It's going to really slow down your site. So that's it. The basic difference you want to have now is when you're working on your blog is you want to be looking at about 72 dpi. So let's look at some examples. Let's suppose I find this image on Flickr on the right-hand side, and I think that's a great image. I'm going to use that image. Okay, well, on my Mac, if I was to right-click on that image, it would tell me that that's 1.2 megabytes. That's 1.2. So in other words, 1,200,000 bytes of information. And the size is 1,600 pixels by 1,600 pixels. So pixel being a dot. So that's huge. It's a big, I could take that image and make a poster out of it. I could take that image and probably make a billboard out of it. Like it's not a billboard, but certainly like a stand-up banner. That's a big image. If I go to Flickr and download it, that's kind of the size. If I go to Dollar Photo Club, that's the size you're going to get. You're going to get like 1.2 megabyte, even bigger images than that. So that's way too big. So you don't want to be working with an image that big. That's a lot of data that your website is trying to pour in really quickly. So what I do is I say, well, actually, I want to make that into a little poster, and I want to have my reference at the bottom to my the artist I want to respect. I want to put a little, sign on the top here, a little banner, which is really easy. I can do that in Canva really quickly or picmonkey. And my goal is to reduce it to actually this size, which is about 82 kilobytes. So 82 kilobytes is going to be 8,200 bytes of information. Or sorry, 82,000 bytes of information. 82,000 bytes of information, and it's 400 times 400 approximately. So it's still square, but look at the difference. So instead of 1,600 by 1,600, I've got now 400 by 400. So incredibly a lot smaller, but as you can see, the image looks pretty clear. So I go back to the original image, and I go back to this image. They both look pretty good. So the difference is that I've now reduced it to something that will be able to load quickly, still looks really sharp. Well, how do I do that? Well, if you're on a PC, you can use Microsoft Paint. Now, I don't have a PC anymore, but if I did have one, that's a very popular free program that comes with your PC. So that would be a really simple one to learn. We just drop your image in, then you click on resize, and then you just change the size. And you just put in the number or the percentage that you want to change it to. So that would be pretty quick. There's a free tool on the web which is really popular called picresize, P-I-C-R-E-S-I-Z-E, picresize. That's a really quick way. I did a little experiment for this slideshow. You just open up picresize. It's totally free. And what I did was I chose an image from one of my recent blogs, and I dropped that image in, and this is what shows up. And it says, number 1, do you want to crop and rotate? Number 2, do you want to resize? Number 3, do you want special effects? And number 4, do you want to save it as what? What set of format? Well, I always like JPEGs. JPEGs are usually able to be uploaded into almost anything on the web. So in this case, I told it that I wanted it to be, in this case, I actually chose 50% smaller, and then that popped out the picture that I wanted. Let's go through an example using picresize. Here's an image from another one of my recent blogs. I put a poster or text on top. I go to picresize. The original image is 1.4 megabytes, so that's huge. Again, that's 1.4 million bytes, and it's a huge image, over 2,000 by 1,300 pixels. So when I go into picresize and I said reduce it by 75%, I ended up with this image on the right-hand side. And it's now 38 kilobytes, or in other words, that's, actually I think kilobytes is 100, so it's 3,800 bytes. And look how much smaller it is. It's now 500 by 300. The point is that when you look at these two images, they look, I mean, I've resized them incorrectly here, but they're identical. They look just as crystal clear. But if you were to actually zoom in, you would actually see that the image on the right is in fact more pixelated. It has less pixels. It's less clear. So zoom in on the left, still crystal clear. Zoom in on the right, you can see the difference. But when you present it on your blog, you can't tell the difference. So the idea here is you want to, once you finish with your image, you want to actually run it through something like picresize and just tell it to reduce it, probably by 75%, and you'll get more of what you're looking for. Okay, a couple of other quick thoughts about blogs. I've mentioned a couple of times about stock photos, and I used to use them a lot, and then I started to realize, wow, everybody was sort of using them, and they started to look, it didn't look very unique. And there's just something about stock photographs that are kind of, I don't know, they just look sort of like you either you haven't put much effort in, or you don't have really a unique brand. And although there are millions of them out there, I just would try to avoid them. Just like you definitely need to avoid Google Images, because those are very unsafe, and you could actually get very nasty letters from American lawyers saying you've used someone's private property. You don't want to try to avoid stock photos, because it just sort of screams out that you're not very unique. And so you could, however, find a stock photograph that maybe you think is kind of interesting, and then maybe you could apply a little bit of text to it, and maybe you can dress it up and make it unique. But what I would prefer, rather than that, is that you look for, if you are going to use stock photographs, like for example, you're going to go to iStock, or you're going to go to Brenda's Graphics Factory, or in my case I use Dollar Photo Club, then look for stock photographs that are just a little bit different, like these 4 here. So to me, these are stock photographs, but they're kind of unique and they're different, and I can work with them. There's something kind of not, I don't know, not perfected about them. And that's the kind of stuff that I might look for and actually use. And it takes a little bit more looking, but they are available out there. So then what do I do when I get that stock photograph? Well, for example, in this case, on the left is the photograph that I found. And this one's actually off of Flickr, but it's kind of a normal looking photograph. It's kind of artsy. And then when I put my text on top on the right hand side, now I've dressed it up so it's really unique for me. I've zoomed in a little bit so that so that it's less emphasis on the actual cup, and it's more of a feeling about being in a coffee shop. So I don't really care that, I don't really want people to be examining the cup. I want them more to get a feeling like it's more of a background image. So I zoom in, I apply text, and I'm done. And that was all done in, I think I used Canva for that one. So very, very simple application. Here's another example. On the left is a picture of a bunny. I think I got this off Flickr. I put a little bit of text on the right-hand side, and suddenly, I've got myself a little bit of a little poster. Here's an example where I used a picture of my brother. This is actually from a climb we did on Mount Logan in '92. And so I apply a little text, and I've got my poster for my blog. And on the right-hand side, there's Riley again. I apply text. So the idea is that with very little work, I've actually taken a picture and just dressed it up so it starts to look like a little bit of a poster. Okay, before I get to kind of wrapping up in a quick summary, any questions so far? Any questions around images and photographs, and any particular challenges that you're having with working with your blog? If you want to share those right now, that would be great. Just go up into the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to address those before I move on. And hopefully all this information is kind of inspiring you to, just go and have a look at your blog and just ask yourself, okay, is this unique? Does this represent the way that I want my brand to be projected online? And then just to be looking at, okay, so what would be the easiest thing for me to do to kind of dress it up? So Jean's asking, so feature image versus drop-in. Right, so thanks for that. So in WordPress, on the right-hand side of your menu, you should see a little button or click, link that says feature an image, and that's the one you want to use. And the reason is because that tells WordPress that that's the image that's going to get pulled whenever your link is used. So when you take the link for each individual blog, every time you open up a blog post, there's a unique link in the URL, in the search tool, and that link tells the internet to go find that blog. And when it does, it pops up that image. So if you grab that link and you stick it into Facebook, the image is going to pop up, which is actually going to be the top part of your blog. And with the loader that we use for SOS, it pulls up the actual image. So when we put the link in, it actually looks for the featured image. So that's why. Now you can put drop-in images later, but you must have a featured image first. So if you look at some of my blog posts, for example, I have a featured image, but then I might have 1 or 2 other small images later on down in the blog post. Well, the important thing is that the main image has been selected as the featured image. So that's great. Peter's asking, presenter media image, what is your thoughts on them? So Are you, Peter? I think you're talking about when you actually present to a group. Are you like what? Is that what you mean by presenter media image? I'm not sure. Elaine's asking, if you can just clarify that, I'll help you out. Elaine's asking, I've tried to enter photos on my blog and then could not get it to work. Is there a good YouTube on doing this? Yeah, Elaine, I'll send you something after we sign off on probably to help you with that. So the trick is with your blog that the first thing you have to do in WordPress is you have to add the image to media, and then you open up your blog and then you select it from media. So it has to be in your media library. So that's kind of the routine that you have to go through. So you have to go first of all to your media library, then you add the image, and that's very straightforward. You just go and click and you go pick the image. Once you've done that, go back to your blog and then hit featured image and go find that image. So the blog works in kind of a logical fashion. First of all, the image has to be in your library, your media library, and then each blog goes and picks one of the images from the library. That's how it works. So first of all, you got to put it in the library. Brenda's asking, have another problem with Google submitting a generic photo into My Photo Solutions. She says, I have had another problem with Google substituting a generic photo into My Photo. Okay, well, we'll have to look at that specifically. I'm not sure why Google would do that. I think we're still looking at the featured image issue. That's usually what it is it has to be looking for the featured image, and we got to make sure that your images are going into featured image. Peter's asking, so using WordPress to resize your photos. I do resize in WordPress. I find it much more difficult, Peter. I find it much easier for me to understand what's going on if I use like picresize or Canva and just do it that way. And then when I put the picture in, once the image is in my post, I can resize it as well by using the drag handles on the side. And then Brenda's asking, I've tried to put in the feature image, but it doesn't show up on my site. Am I doing something wrong? Brenda, I'll check with you after we sign off, and I'll see if I can help you out with that. Maybe we can do something. There may be some little trick that I can show you how to do that. Oh, Peter's saying presenter media does cartoon type images doing actions. Yeah, that's okay. It just depends on what your style is, Peter. Like if you want to do cartoon, I think you could do it sparingly once in a while. I really think that people like to see people. So a little trick I learned recently, by the way, is that the most viewed photos are of people looking out. So you can kind of think of National Geographic magazines. I can remember that stunning photograph. I think it was like their #1 cover photograph of that girl from Afghanistan or somewhere. And she just has this incredibly lonely look in her eyes looking out at you. And I'm sure everybody can conjure up that image. And it's actually females looking out, but either gender looking out. So the most viewed photographs are with people looking out, which makes sense. People looking at us are going to get our attention. That's kind of how we're wired. So I think if you want to use cartoons once in a while, it's okay, but I actually think you're going to find that people are going to pay more attention if you use real photographs of people doing things or looking at the reader, or something that represents what you're talking about in the blog. And Flickr is a great place to look. Just go through the routine I showed you and just start looking at, in your case, Peter, I would start typing in customer service, store, restaurant, customer service, just typing keywords like that and just start seeing the images that come up. Make sure you select Creative Commons commercial use. Do a little legwork. Grab 2 or 3 pictures at a time, and now you've got a bit of an inventory. And I would really encourage all of you to look for images of people that are who look like your readers, look like your ideal customers. That's the first thing. So if you're trying to appeal to business people, look for images that represent business people, and vice versa. If you're trying to appeal to like school teachers or lay people, whatever, just think about what they're dressed like and what they look like and what their age is and their gender, and then look for images of people looking out. Like, that's the simple thing, is like if they're looking out at the reader's going to kind of stop and kind of look at it because it's sort of the way that we're wired. So, but having said all that, I mean, you can also, mess it up and change around, and once in a while you can put in a cartoon or an illustration or whatever. But there's a reason why magazines use pictures of people. It gets more attention than a picture of a building or even a picture of a dog, right? So pictures of people work. Okay, so thanks for those comments, and I'll follow up with those of you that need help, or you can just email me at hugh@hughculver.com, obviously. Okay, quick little summary. So images do work. It is more work, but it is definitely worth your while. I have seen incredible results in the last even couple of months with the SOS program on my own blog, but also just by putting more attention into images, both on my blog and also in SlideShare. So I'm seeing much more sharing and much more readership and more social sharing. Social sharing, what I mean by that is people clicking on the Facebook buttons and the Google Plus buttons. A lot more in just the last couple of months because I'm putting more attention on my images. It is a great way to express your brand. It's a great way to kind of, show people the way you think and the way that you're working. So Elaine with the agricultural focus, obviously they're going to want to see pictures of people doing stuff in the agriculture. They're going to want to see pictures of people doing all that work because that's what they do and they can relate to that. It also makes your blog more shareable because you have an attractive image on there. Again, avoid stock images, avoid Google images. Try to find things that are a little bit unique. If you can find a photographer you can work with, that would be great. But just go to Flickr and start searching around, and you'll find hundreds and hundreds of examples of photographs that you can probably use right away. And I encourage you to create a routine. What I mean by that is find a way so this is not a huge effort. So after I've written my blog and I feel really comfortable that it's ready to go as far as the copy goes, then I go look for an image. And usually takes me at least a half hour to find the image, resize it, put the text on there, do that whole routine. But then to me it's just a really it's actually the fun part because the writing is really hard and that's what's going to take me the most time. But the image is kind of how I wrap it up. And then I would also finally encourage you to look at updating your past posts. So it's a bit of work, but I would really encourage you to go back and just say, okay, so how could I kind of quickly add a little image to every one of my posts? Because one of the cool things about blogs is that people will go back and look at past blogs. And I see that all the time, is that all of my blogs get more and more readership every week. And so the more attractive I can make them, even improving my grammar, looking at my how to make them punchier, adding cross-links within my blog, so one blog links to another blog. All of these little things, adding bold, adding underlines, all of these little things can still be done to your past posts. And each one of those posts is like an inventory. It's like a calling card. And so the better you make them, they're just sitting there working for you 24/7. So I'd really encourage you, don't forget about the past ones. And Michael Hyatt, for example, who has like 250,000 subscribers on his email list, he talks about this all the time, where he goes back and he looks at his past posts. And if they're popular in particular, he's going to work on them. He's going to refine them. He's going to make them even better. So Elaine said, I also start doing this more with my paper articles, giving images to go along. That's a great idea, Elaine. Yeah, I think that we put so much emphasis on text and copy, which it should be, but we have to remember that if people don't read it, then it's all kind of for naught. So we got to also make sure that they're attractive. And what I hope that this little webinar has done is just really remind you of how important this is, but also just to encourage you to look for simple ways so you're not constantly sort of starting all over again. So for example, if you figure out how to use Flickr for my instructions, just always use Flickr. If you want to use, whatever club you're in or Dollar Photo Club, then just always go there. But come up with a routine so okay, I find the image, then I add text if I want to add text, I resize it, I load it up into my library, I go into my blog, I make it the featured image, done. I'm out of there. I'm done. So that's my routine. I go through it every single time. And I hope that what you're going to find is that it makes life a little easier. You don't have to worry about it. Eventually you can delegate this to somebody else. But what's going to happen is it's going to make your blog more popular. It's also going to help us to promote you because a good image will be there waiting for us when we start using your links. Okay, everybody. Listen, I want to respect your time. I want to keep these to about 45 minutes. It's kind of funny. I actually thought I thought I'd be through this in about 30 minutes, but it's great to have the exchange with all of you. Super appreciate all of you being on the call today. Thanks, Rob and Peter and Jean and Elaine and Brenda and Sarah. And for all of you that are listening to this as a recording, great to have you listening in. Really excited about having you as part of SOS. We're continuing to improve it and do more and more. We just want to really help you out to be super, super successful. So, we appreciate all your feedback, and we're learning all the time. And remember, if you have colleagues and people that you know could use SOS, send them our way, and we're going to credit you a free month every time you do that. So if they sign up as a member. Okay, thanks everybody. Till we talk again, be your best, see the best in others, and hey, make it happen. Thanks for being on.